Today marks the 12-month anniversary since the escalation in hostilities between Hamas and Israel. It's on this day that Hamas launched, which was an unprecedented attack on Israel, resulting in retaliation by that country, which continues today. Of course, what leads to October 7th doesn't start just there. You can talk about 74 years of history in the build-up to what we now consider the October the 7th. But where does this leave us now? This morning we look at how this conflict has influenced this continent and the globe. I'm also reminded of Mia Mottley. She's the Prime Minister of Barbados, speaking at the United Nations General Assembly, talking about a world that constantly looks to seek some international common understanding, world peace, if you want to call it that, and that we constantly go through valleys and peaks in reaching that. And this may be a very, very deep valley before we reach some international common understanding. Gustavo de Carvalho is a senior researcher at the South Africa Institute for International Relations, joins me now on the line. Gustavo, really appreciate your time. The world, understanding between nations and peoples, is it a different world that we experienced since 12 months ago? Good morning.
Good morning, Lester, and thank you very much for having me here. And I think you're absolutely right when you talk about the values and peaks in terms of the global order. And I think October the 7th and the reaction that occurred after certainly provides a new moment in terms of questions that the international community has had already for a number of years in terms of what is the effectiveness of our institutions like the United Nations to deal and respond with regional and global crises. We've seen also an increasing divide between narratives from global South countries that have been very active in putting pressure in dealing with issues that for them is not a new issue. It's an issue related to colonialism, is an issue related to occupation, and at the same time, how different parts of the world look in terms of those crises, in terms of priority. And if we can look into Israel and Gaza on the one side and Ukraine on the other side, we've seen that split in terms of narratives and action that have a direct impact on our own global ability of dealing with conflicts and crisis.
The West, led by the United States, has spoken quite a lot about what we know as a global rules order, but over the last 12 months, where 40,000 people have been killed, including 16,000 children have been killed in Gaza. Does a global rules order exist in how various nations respond to that statistic alone? 16,000 children having been killed in Gaza just in the last 12 months.
Well, I would say that the global rules order does exist, but it's certainly very under risk, and it's being tested continuously for the last couple of years. It's indeed the narratives that countries like the United States and Western countries at large have been presenting on this global rules order have also heightened arguments on double standards that exist within the global order. And certainly these are issues that countries like ours, South Africa, and other African countries and global South countries have been putting a lot of pressure to make sure that these rules that have been set for the last 75 to 80 years are actually pursued, are actually implemented, because at the end of the day, for smaller countries, that global rules order would matter the most. But when that the institutions, the values, and the rules that have been set become threatened, both in terms of actions, but also in terms of the narratives, action, and inactions of countries, countries tend to pursue other means to achieve their goals. So it is of particularly important for us, and requires concerted effort, requires pressure, and requires particularly action.
Let's talk about how tensions just have ratcheted up just over the last few weeks and months. It's no longer just Israel in Gaza against Hamas. It is Israel against Houthis in South Lebanon. It is Israel against Hezbollah. Houthis in South Yemen. Hezbollah in Lebanon. Also Iran at the moment. Just how concerned are you of a broader, overarching Middle East conflict in the next while?
It is indeed very concerning, and we are at the brink of a spillover and escalation of conflicts in the Middle East that would have direct impact on the global economy, on our institutions, on the perceptions of countries in terms of stability within the global order. It's important to note that a conflict in the Middle East would have a direct impact, as we've seen with the Houthi attacks in the Bab el-Mandab Strait in the last couple of months, in terms of the ability of something that often we take for granted, that is the ability of trading routes to be maintained and of countries to be able to buy and sell. The Middle East is not only the largest oil-producing region in the world, but it's also a very important corridor for goods to be able to be moved from different parts of the world. But I think there is a particular a risk when it comes to a potential escalation that would be another threat and another risk to the ability of institutions like the United Nations to remain relevant and to present itself as a viable alternative for armed conflict and to be able to manage those through negotiations. I think it is a very risky and sad moment that we live in international relations at the moment. And I think it's important that countries in different parts of the world continue to put pressure to ensure there is a negotiated settlement in those conflicts that reduces the likelihood of violence that would have a very severe impact on civilian populations in the region.
Gustavo de Carvalho is a senior researcher at the South African Institute for International Affairs.